Bivši britanski princ Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, kojem su oduzete kraljevske titule zbog veza s osuđenim seksualnim prestupnikom Jeffrijem Epsteinom, uhapšen je u četvrtak pod sumnjom za zloupotrebu javne funkcije. A večeras ćemo raspravljati Epsteinove dosije u kojem se spominju i profesor sa univerziteta u Los Angelesu Tramo. Mailovi sa seksualnim prestupnikom šokirali su svijet. U njima Tramo s Epsteinom dijeli studiju o novorođenčadima. Moja gošća večeras je doktorica razvojne psihologije koja sedmicama protestuje na kampusu protiv profesora Boni Džof. Američka vojska spremna je napasti Iran već ovog vikenda, iako američki predsjednik Donald Tramp još nije donio konačnu odluku o tome hoće li odobriti takve akcije. Iran održava vojne vježbe s Rusijom. Pregovorima u Ženevi, kaže Trump, nije značajno oduševljen. Završena je Minhenska konferencija o sigurnosti 2026. pod motom Under Destruction. Okupila je svjetske lidere u debati o raspadu međunarodnog poretka zasnovanog na pravilima. Jedna od glavnih tema je upravo i Iran, izvještava moj kolega Vlastimir Vidić. Ja sam Ika Ferrer-Gotić, ovo je Puls Planete. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, bivši britanski princ, kojem su oduzete kraljevske titule zbog veza s osuđenim seksualnim prestupnikom Jeffrijem Epsteinom, uhapšen je u četvrtak pod sumnjom za zloupotrebu javne funkcije. Britanska policija saopćila je da je u pritvoru muškarac u 60. godinama iz Norfolka, ne navodeći ime, ali je upućivala na raniju istragu vezanu za princa. Kralj Charles poručio je da zakon mora teći svojim tokom. Istraga uključuje navode da je Andrew slao povjerljive trgovinske izvještaje Epsteinu 2010. godine dok je bio specijalni izaslanik za trgovinu.
I think it's a domino effect right now. I think we should absolutely commend the king and we should commend the UK on how they've been handling the situation thus far. I can only relate in certain ways with how hard that would be to go up against one of your own relatives, specifically your brother. But yes, I think we have a long way to go here. There are dominoes that need to continue to fall here. My sister named over 40 men in her depositions. I think she's case in point where she's proven to be a truth teller. She had no reason to lie. She came forward because it was like the most basic level. She came forward because she wanted to protect the next generation, to inspire others to really realize that an ordinary girl can absolutely do extraordinary things. And she's proving that to the world today. So I hope that we take a closer look at Virginia's depositions. I think we should take a closer look at our survivor sisters and their depositions and what they've given already to our own government. And at this point, the real question is, when are we going to start believing survivors?
I would say on this side of the pond, in the U.S., in our very own backyard, we have seen far less action, and it is quite shameful on our part. Just coming back from the Pam Bondi hearing and just the lack of respect and acknowledgement that Pam Bondi owes survivors, it's so very clear. And so what I would say on our end is that the Department of Justice needs to finish this job and do it correctly, right? We need to continue to protect the survivors. We need to unmask the co-conspirators and potential perpetrators. And then we need to see indictments. We need to see further investigations like the UK, like Norway, right? I mean, we're talking about the UK that maybe has a small handful of people that are implicated versus the United States, who potentially has dozens of names of men, of perpetrators. And so we need to do our job here. It's the least that we can do for her, right? She spent her entire life protecting her little brother, protecting her family, protecting everyone's children, future, protecting her survivor sisters. And there's this sense of obligation to her legacy, to her work, that, we're determined to see through. We're determined to pull her across that finish line, even if she's not here.
Today was a win for all survivors out there. I want to use this moment to say Virginia did this for you. She did this for the next generation. I mean, even though Andrew was arrested for potentially sharing trade secrets, this is the next step in actual justice. If these men were potentially capable of harming or violating the most heinous act that you can do out there with sexual assault, what else are they going to be capable of?
Američka državna tužiteljica Pam Bondi suočila se sa oštrim pitanjima tokom saslušanja pred Komitetom zastupničkog doma gdje joj je republikanski kongresmen Thomas Massey kritikovao zbog objave ličnih podataka žrtava u dokumentima slučaja povezanog upravo s Epsteinom. Massey je ocijenio da je time nanesena dodatna šteta preživjelima i upitao zašto drugi navodni povezani muškarci nisu pod istragom. Bondi je uzvratila optužbama da je fokus na dokumentima politički motivisan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Behind me, I have 3 documents from the DOJ production that are emblematic of the massive failure of the DOJ to comply with the Epstein Files Transparency Act. To my right is an email that was sent by the victim's lawyers to the DOJ. It was a list of names not to redact, a list of names not to release. What did the DOJ do with this email? They released this email in the document production. Literally the worst thing you could do to the survivors, you did. And they're getting phone calls. A lot of these people didn't want to be known. And we know you touched the document because you redacted one name and you redacted the lawyer's name, but you left the survivor's name there. The next document I want to show you, that was in the title, the victims' survivors' names, all right? The title of this one is Child Sex Trafficking, Co-Conspirators, fully redacted. And by the way, I'm going to unredact them here. Lesa Veksnera is in this. Now, your your deputy attorney general said, oh, well, he appears hundreds of times in the files. But he doesn't appear in this file until I forced you to release it, where he's listed as a co-conspirator, not to tax evasion, but to child sex trafficking, not to prostitution, not to money laundering, child sex trafficking. So I have several questions for you. Who's responsible? Are you able to track who in your organization made this massive failure and released the victims' names? Are you able to track who it was that obscured Lesa Veksnera's name as a co-conspirator in an FBI document? Do you have that kind of accountability?
We corrected that within 40 minutes. He was already, you're acting like everybody's trying to cover up Veksnera's name.
Reclaiming my time.
I'm going to answer this question.
Reclaiming my time.
Mr. Chairman. This is how this works.
Can I have my time back?
Mr.
Chairman.
The gentlelady can give her answer.
Within 40 minutes, Veksnera's name was added back.
Within 40 minutes of me catching you red-handed.
There was one redaction out
where
of
he's
over
listed as a co-conspirator.
And we invited you in. This guy has Trump derangement syndrome. He needs to get, you're a failed politician. You need to get on
you to watch the video.
Mr. Chairman, please restore his time and
Did you ask Merrick Garland that the last 4 years? Did you talk about Epstein?
I am reclaiming my time. I'm glad you're asking about Merrick Garland.
You don't get to reclaim time
this is bigger than Watergate.
When I don't answer a question
this
the way you
goes
want.
over 4 administrations. You don't have to go back to Biden. Let's go back to Obama. Let's go back to George Bush. This cover-up spans decades, and you are responsible for this portion of it.
There is yet another person connected to Epstein, as it shows in shocking email evidence released by DOJ. UCLA professor Mark Tramo's decade-long correspondence with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein has ignited fierce protests on campus, demanding his ouster despite no criminal charges against him yet. Controversial emails reveal Tramo's 2007 support amid Epstein's prostitution charges, a flippant response to Epstein's inquiry about female students' attractiveness, and discussion on newborns' responses to maternal voices, prompting outrage over potential ties to Epstein's predatory history. Tramo denies knowledge of Epstein's underage abuses, but backlash persists. Dr. Boni Džof is a psychologist, speaker, specialist in early adversity development, activist and UCLA lecturer. Džof has been vocal in protesting UCLA's decision to retain Professor Mark Tramo amid Epstein revelations. Dr. Boni, welcome to Newsmax Balkans. It's so good to have you here.
Thank you.
Dr. Boni, you have been very vocal on this case, the connection between Professor Tramo and late sex offender Epstein. What motivated you to lead or join these protests, and how do you believe they reflect broader accountability issues, especially in academia?
I actually happened upon the specific file where Tramo was mentioned regarding the infant's voices and the sucking reflex by coincidence, and quickly recognized the study that he was referring to as one that I actually teach in my developmental psychology courses. When I saw the signature at UCLA, I felt sick to my stomach and immediately looked further to see what UCLA was going to be doing about this. Unfortunately, the response has been nothing.
It has been nothing. When I asked you to join me in this discussion, when I asked you to come on my show, it happened when I saw the Instagram reel that you posted on social media.
Take a screenshot of that and read it. This is something that I teach in my classes at UCLA. I cannot imagine what they are using that information for.
I feel that your shock, your disgust really reflects how we all feel about that particular email that DOJ released. And now, drawing from your expertise in psychology, child development in particular, how do you interpret the email where Tramo discussed citing, and you mentioned it as well, newborns sucking more vigorously on pacifiers triggered by their mother's voice? I can't believe I'm even saying this. And citation, especially in the context of Epstein's interest given his history of child exploitation.
Yes. So as it turns out, Professor Tramo is actually completely mischaracterizing the research that he's referring to. This is a study from 1980 by DeCasper and colleagues, where they were specifically investigating whether or not newborns are able to detect their mother's voices and if they have a preference for those voices at birth. It's really hard to ask newborns questions. And so a research methodology that's used is one that relies on an infant sucking reflex. And so using pacifiers, these babies were actually trained to know that when they sucked on the pacifier at a higher amplitude, that their mother's voice would play for them. And in fact, the infants did show a preference for their mother's voice, which was reflected by the amplitude of their sucking on a pacifier. So Tramo not only mischaracterized the research that he was sharing, but I think it reveals his intention behind sharing that particular piece of information, because the finding that infants prefer their mother's voices is completely irrelevant to what he was sharing with Epstein.
He said that he was not aware of Epstein's predatory history, but why would a professor share such a piece of information with someone like Jeffrey Epstein, even if he was not aware of his predatory history and child exploitation? Why would someone share this information?
I think it's obvious. The implications are obvious, and the information that he shared wasn't even correct or accurate, which speaks to not just his moral failings, but perhaps his intellectual ones as well.
And just as we mentioned now, as a doctor appalled by the pacifier study's implications, just like the rest of the world, I believe, how does this specific research potentially intersect with the psychology of attachment in children that predators exploit? And what dangers do you see in such studies being shared with someone like we just mentioned, like Epstein, and how might it relate to grooming or manipulation tactics?
Yes, this is particularly disturbing because the question asked, do newborns recognize their mother's voices, is specifically about attachment. And attachment is about safety, an infant's inherent ability to connect to their dedicated caregiver in order to ensure their survival. So the fact that infants have a preference for their mother's voices is speaking to the fact that they feel safe in their presence. To exploit that for a sexual purpose is beyond my comprehension.
And there are other shocking revelations that include Tramo's response to Epstein asking if female students were cute, prompting a wider disgust. Can you elaborate on why this exchange amplifies a failure in professional boundaries, particularly from a neurological and psychological standpoint?
I think obviously this violates our, I'm going to start that over. I think this obviously violates our code of ethics at UCLA as faculty. We have annual sexual harassment trainings. We are well prepared to ensure that our students are maintaining safety in terms of any form of sexual harassment at the university. And Tramo clearly violated that.
And the protests against Tramo's continued role at UCLA stem from ethical concerns over his Epstein ties. How has the university's response or lack thereof affected your trust in its leadership and policies on faculty conduct?
I'm extremely concerned that the university has not spoken on the matter whatsoever. The only communication has come from the student-led newspaper. We know that UCLA is being selective in terms of who they implicate for misconduct. For example, earlier in the year, we had the director of DEI at UCLA put on administrative leave and then fired for making a comment regarding the death of Charlie Kirk. So the silence here is quite glaring.
Quite glaring. And protests have focused on Tramo's employment, continuing unchecked, pretty much. What role do you think public pressure really plays in forcing institutions to address such allegations? And have you faced any backlash for involvement as well? You have been very vocal on this.
I haven't received any backlash at this point. I was protesting by myself at one point and was approached by the security and UCPD regarding that, which was surprising to me. I am very hopeful that as this silence is prolonged, it becomes more and more clear to the faculty and the students that UCLA is violating their unspoken contract with us to keep us safe from predators.
And the funding has always been an issue for universities and academia as well. Now, the emails reveal Tramo offering support to Epstein during 2007 charges. As someone protesting his position, how do you view this as indicative of moral compromise? And what psychological insights can you offer on why academics might overlook red flags for funding?
I'm horrified by it. It is a massive ethical violation. And the idea that the research is centered around children is even more disturbing. I don't understand the connection, but the idea that a pedophile would engage a researcher on the science of child psychology is very troubling.
And diving into child psychology that you are mentioning, I mean, these revelations, how might Epstein's documented interest in brain science and infant responses, as discussed with Professor Tramo, align with patterns of psychopathic behavior or exploitation strategies targeting minors?
I am not a clinical psychologist, and I cannot speak to the diagnoses that these individuals likely deserve, but the behavior is deeply amoral and resembles psychopathy to me.
And the shocking aspect of Tramo blind copying Epstein on student inquiries, raising privacy concerns from your psychological perspective. What risks does this pose to young women's health, mental health, and sense of safety in academic environments?
I've spoken with many students regarding Tramo and his involving his own female students in his correspondence with Jeffrey Epstein, and they are horrified. They are afraid, and they feel absolutely betrayed by the university's silence.
Who can they trust, really, after seeing all of this, after being in the center of it all happening? Who's going to protect these young women, these young individuals who seek protection and trust, of course, from academics?
I can only speak for myself. I'm doing everything that I can right now to ensure that my students feel safe in my classroom and that they know that they can reach out to me specifically with any concerns that they have regarding the conduct of other professors. But my understanding is that for the students I've spoken with, no other professors are speaking to their student body about what is happening with Tramo.
And revelations about Tramo's regretful reply to Epstein's cute comment have fueled outrage psychologically. How does this illustrate enabling behavior? And what advice would you give to educators now, on spotting and rejecting such predatory inquiries?
I think it should be obvious. We have the training in sexual harassment, as I mentioned before, but it's obviously clear that we do not discuss the physical appearance of female students with anyone. We don't discuss individuals' appearance, never mind the fact that he's speaking to a sexual predator.
And one more question. The broader fallout from Epstein's academic entanglements shocks really many around the world, not just in the United States, but around the world. In protesting Tramo specifically, how do you connect his case to systemic issues in child protection within research funding? And what reforms do you advocate for preventing future ties to abusers?
The SRCD, the Society for Research on Child Development, has been working since 2011 to create unique ethical guidelines for child research, because we know that children are a vulnerable population, and we know that children rely on adults to keep them safe. If they cannot participate in research knowing that their safety is secured, then we lose the privilege to engage children in this way.
And doctor, I have to ask you just one more question. What do you think the justice should look like, should be like for all Epstein's victims at this point? And we don't see many arrests happening. We know that the former British Prince, Andrew, was arrested Thursday. What do you think the justice should look like? What do you think the victims could really look forward to?
I think the victims should be able to select the punishment for themselves. We need to facilitate these arrests. If a former Prince of England can be arrested for his involvement with Epstein, surely an adjunct professor at UCLA can face accountability for his role in this. As far as what these punishments look like, let's let the victims select.
That is very straightforward. You are continuing to protest on campus. Do you think there's going to be an outcome of that? Do you hope for someone to really hear you and hear the people that are with you protesting his Tramo's position at UCLA?
I will not stop until the university is held accountable. We have something called the First Amendment, freedom of speech, in our U.S. Constitution. As long as that remains, I will speak out about this.
Thank you for shedding light on this topic, on this matter, and thank you for being honest with me.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Američka vojska spremna je napasti Iran već ovog vikenda, iako američki predsjednik Donald Tramp još nije donio konačnu odluku o tome hoće li odobriti takve akcije. Bijela kuća obavještena je da bi vojska mogla biti spremna za napad ovog vikenda nakon značajnog gomilanja zračnih i pomorskih sredstava na Bliskom istoku. Posljednjih dana, rekli su to izvori, iranski i američki pregovarači razmenjivali su bilješke 3,5 sata u utorak tokom indirektnih pregovora u Ženevi iako su otišli bez jasnog rješenja. Glavni iranski pregovarač rekao da su se obje strane dogovorile o skupu vodećih načela, iako je američki dužnosnik rekao da još uvijek ima mnogo detalja za raspravu. U međuvremenu, Iran vrši vježbe u moru zajedno sa Rusijom.
I'm not going to talk to you about that, but we're either going to get a deal or it's going to be unfortunate for them.
And you said today 10 days. Have you given them a deadline firm to make a deal?
I would think that would be enough time, 10, 15 days, pretty much maximum.
We had a very good talks a few days ago in Geneva, and we were able to discuss the questions related to our nuclear program and to the U.S. sanctions. And we agreed on a set of principles or guiding principles for our negotiation and how a deal can look like. One thing I have to emphasize is that there is no military solution for Iran's nuclear program. That has been tested last year. The only solution is diplomacy. This is why the U.S. is back in the table of negotiation and is seeking a deal. And we are prepared for that. We are prepared for, war, and we are prepared for peace. We are prepared for diplomacy, and we are prepared for negotiation as much as we are prepared for war.
Your position is that the United States didn't ask for a permanent suspension of enrichment. Is that what you're telling me?
Yes, what we are now talking about is how to make sure that Iran's nuclear program, including enrichment, is peaceful and would remain peaceful forever.
Minhenska konferencija o sigurnosti 2026 je održana od 13. do 15. februara pod motom Under Destruction. Okupila je svjetske lidere u debati o raspadu međunarodnog poretka zasnovanog na pravilima. Njemački kancelar Friedrich Merz upozorio je na duboki rasip između Europe i Sjedinjenih Američkih Država, pozivajući na jačanje evropske vojne, ekonomske i tehnološke moći na novo transatlantsko partnerstvo. Američki potpredsjednik J.D. Vance istakao je razlike u perspektivama dok se raspravljalo o NATO 3.0 i odbrani od revizionizma Rusije i Kine, kao što su rekli. Prošireni Abrahamovi sporazumi uključili su Kazahstan, jačajući regionalnu saradnju protiv Irana. Zaključci. Svijet ulazi u eru wrecking ball politike s fokusom na odbranu vrijednosti i nove koalicije. O konferenciji razgovaram s našim dopisnikom Vlastimirom Vidićem, koji mi se pridružio ovim momentima iz Minhena, gdje je pratio konferenciju. Vlastimire, dobrodošao u Puls Planete.
Još bolje vas našao i naravno pozdrav svim gledalcima.
Svakako pozdrav posebnoj gledateljki, tvojoj majci, večeras koja gleda. Hajde da imamo dvije teme koje su jako bitne. Prije svega, hajde da govorimo o konferenciji. Koji su glavni zaključci ove konferencije, posebno o budućnosti međunarodnog poretka, gdje se najviše govorilo je li taj međunarodni poredak, kao što su rekli, slomljen, ozlijeđen ili ojačan i kako to utiče zaista na evropsku sigurnost?
Da, mislim da su vjerovatno gledalci tokom konferencije, a onda vjerovatno i prva 2 dana poslije čuli otprilike šta je koji govornik najvažniji na konferenciji rekao, tako da ću se truditi što manje da interpretiram te govore. Zapravo ono što je bilo najvažnije konstatovati, dakle, šta se dešava sa transatlantskim odnosima. Ni u kom slučaju oni nisu prekinuti, ni u kom slučaju oni nisu definitivno došli u ćorsokak. Radi se samo zapravo o redefinisanju odnosa između transatlantskih partnera, pri tome naravno mislim između evropskog dijela i američkog. Posebno kada kažem američkog, to mislim na Sjedinjene Američke Države, zato što recimo Kanada je dosta na frekvenciji evropskog dijela tog transatlantskog saveza. Dakle, jednostavno dolazi do jasnog redefinisanja, mijenjanja uloge evropskog dijela koji će dobijati sve veću samostalnost u smislu i političkog odlučivanja, ali i vojnog i bezbednosnog položaja dovođenja u što manju, koliko je god moguće, zavisnost od Sjedinjenih Američkih Država. Tako da ovogodišnju mirovnu konferenciju možemo shvatiti jednostavno kao, ajde da kažemo, definitivno otrežnjenje evropske komponente Transatlantskog saveza i biranja puta kojim će se maksimalno pokušati ojačati, orijentisati i da bude što samostalniji, ali i dalje sa jednim jasnim pogledom da veze i odnosi moraju da ostanu prema Sjedinjenim Američkim Državama, jer jednostavno u ovom momentu je pitanje vremena još koje treba proteći, pa da Evropa kaže, mi smo sada samostalni u tom bezbedonosnom smislu.
Da li jedan od zaključaka bio je da svijet ulazi u eru wrecking ball politike upravo s fokusom na odbranu vrijednosti i novih koalicija, kao što spominješ, da Evropa zaista mora da stvori jedan evropski front koji će biti što manje zavistan od Sjedinjenih Američkih Država. Da li smo mi ušli u eru upravo te wrecking ball politike?
Pa u svakom slučaju da jesmo. Na neki način ona je najavljivana i prvim mandatom Donalda Trumpa. Tada se, ajde da kažemo ovdje, prvom domaćinu u Njemačkoj, tada je bila prvi domaćin još uvijek Angela Merkel, koja je bila pomalo zatečena kao i cijela Evropska unija, ali čini mi se da je nekako tih 4 godine prvih Donalda Trumpa prošlo eto samo u tom nekoj najavi i vjerovatno u spoznaji da Sjedinjene Američke Države, bez obzira bio tu Trump ili ne, neće izgleda odustati od onog traženog učešća u procentualnim iznosima u finansiranju NATO pakta. Međutim, kada je došao drugi mandat Donalda Trumpa, ta naracija se nastavila, a onda slede određeni događaj i na neki način prošlogodišnja Minhenska bezbedonosna konferencija i nastup potpredsjednika Sjedinjenih Američkih Država J.D. Vansa u mnogo čemu je Evropu prizenio i na neki način u sportskom, bokserskom rječnikom rečeno zadao pravi knockdown. I nekako čini mi se da je Evropska unija, odnosno uvijek da kažem evropski partner u Transatlantskom savezu, zapravo bio u tom nekom knockdownu, a onda i kako je bio i nedavno Davos, vidjeli smo i tamo govor, ali čini mi se od Davosa, a definitivno od ove Minhenske konferencije, ja imam običaj da kažem da je evropski partner definitivno skinuo tu političku crninu tog nekog žalidbenog procesa i jednostavno shvatio i krenuo dalje pun spoznaje da mora da uzme sudbinu u svoje ruke, tako da će biti vrlo zanimljivo kako će se u tom paralelnom putokazu kretati i jedna i druga strana i zapravo koliko će biti zajednička agenda, a koliko će vući posebno svoje poteze.
Da, najnovija vijest ove sedmice. Američka vojska spremna napasti Iran ovog vikenda, iako američki predsjednik Donald Tramp još nije donio konačnu odluku o tome hoće li odobriti takve akcije. Zaključno, ova vijest zaključno sa petkom ove sedmice. Hajde sada da govorimo o Iranu. Koliko je izvjestan američki napad, odnosno napad američke vojske na Iran ovog vikenda, kao što je bila jedna upravo od tema konferencije o sigurnosti u Minhenu?
Ja se samo nadam dok se emituje ova emisija da taj sukob neće početi, kao i da uopšte neće početi, ali očigledno kako stvari stoje, sve je tu spremno, jer poznato je da velika sila kako je Sjedinjene Američke Države, kada angažuje cjelokupan ovaj vojni kompleksa, posebno nosače aviona i sve tu prateću infrastrukturu, da to rijetko bude put bez upotrebe oružja, nažalost. Dakle, zanimljivo je da se na ovogodišnjoj Minhenskoj bezbedonosnoj konferenciji potpuno obrnuto srazmjerno od veličine problema. Moje lično mišljenje je da je veća opasnost po svjetski mir upravo sukob koji se može dešavati tu na Dalekom istoku, sukob između Sjedinjenih Američkih Država i Irana, sukob između Izraela i Irana i cjelokupni taj kompleks pitanja Gaze, da mnogo više može ugroziti svjetski mir nego sukob u Ukrajini, zato što je on izuzetno blizu Evrope, u Evropi je i verovatno da će imati veću distancu i veću pozornost, a ovo sada što se dešava oko Irana, dakle ovaj drugi pokušaj Sjedinjenih Američkih Država nimalo nije bezazlen i vraćam se opet na tu konstataciju, vjerovali ili ne. Dakle, ovo su Tako, knjižice koje su dijeljene nama novinarima na bezbednosnoj Minhenskoj konferenciji svakog dana i potpun sadržaj, petak, subota, nedelja, i vjerovali ili ne, nema uopšte ni jednog panela za Iran koji je pretpostavljao diskusiju o pitanju tog žarišta. Dakle, bilo je pominjanje i kraj rata u Sudanu, pominjanje i Sirije, ali o tako važnom jednom pitanju neverovatno koliko je bilo zapravo malo informacija ako ostavimo ono što se dešavalo eventualno u 4 oka. Međutim, teško je razgovarati o problemu ako strana u sukobu nije prisutna, a pored, ako govorimo o velikim igračima i velikim silama, pored naravno nijednog predstavnika od strane ruske oficijalne vlade, da kaže, nije bio niko ni od predstavnika Irana, tako da je onda da su to mogli biti samo jednosmjerni neki razgovori, ali nije bilo oficijalno ni toga. Bile su samo velike demonstracije.
Šta nam to govori? Da tako važno žarište u svijetu o kojem cijeli svijet govori nije uopće bilo na planu sigurnosne konferencije, svjetske sigurnosne konferencije gdje su došli svjetski lideri. Šta nam to govori zaista o tom žarištu ili pogledu u smislu ozbiljnosti i želje da se o tome uopće govori u javnosti?
To govori možda o kredibilnosti Minhenske sigurnosne konferencije kada su u pitanju problemi na nivou cijelog svijeta. Ako je njena kredibilnost ono što se dešava u Evropi ili samo na potezu, da kažemo, preko atlantskog smjera odnosa, onda ako se izostavi ovo pitanje Irana, pitanje Izraela, Gaze i pitanje tolike napetosti, ako to izostane na jednoj bezbednosnoj konferenciji, onda vjerovatno to može da ukazuje samo na to da neko očigledno nije želio o tome da diskutuje ili je neko dobio input, odnosno domaćin, da je dobio input sa određene strane da se o tome ne diskutuje, što naravno nonsens, što je nevjerovatno da se o takvom jednom problemu ne diskutuje, ali ajde da vidimo, možda i nije teško pogoditi ko je insistirao da se o tome uopšte ne diskutuje ili ne razgovara ili ne priča, ili jednostavno određeni faktori rade na terenu, ali bojim se da vrijeme curi i pitanje uopšte koliko za razgovor i dogovor još uvijek ima vremena.
Da, vrlo dobra analiza. Vlastimire, hvala ti za sada. Znaćemo naravno naredne sedmice kakav je vikend iza nas bio i evo pozivam te da se vratiš ponovno u emisiju da o tome razgovaramo. Nadam se da neće biti ratova, naravno. To se svako ljudsko biće tome nada, ali evo, hajde da vidimo kako će proteći ovaj vikend. Hvala ti puno.
Ja bih samo na kraju rekao, u vrijeme Ahmedinske dinastije 550. godine do 330. godine nove ere, to je bila, kažu, prvo svjetsko carstvo, Persijsko carstvo, takva jedna kultura, takva jedna tradicija, takva jedna veličanstvena civilizacija, ali eto sada je došlo do tog zapravo da je to zapravo jedan od najvećih problema. Nadajmo se da će mudrost pobijediti i da narod Irana neće patiti.
Nadajmo se da će mudrost pobijeti. Hvala ti puno. Bio ovo naš kolega koji mi se javio iz Minhena, Vlastimir Vidić. Mi nastavljamo dalje.
We have, Steve has done a great job. And then a little bit later on, we brought Jared in. And Jared was responsible for the Abraham Accords, which is incredible. Nobody else could have done that. A very smart guy. And we're making Jared an envoy also, envoy of peace. They're both envoys of peace. And you couldn't get two. I tell you what, I watch these two guys. I say, at least we're covered from an IQ standpoint. These two guys walk into a room. But people like them both, you know. I want to thank Special Envoy for Peace, Steve Witkoff, who has been unbelievable. You know, I took Steve because I was a developer in New York, really successful. The war in Gaza is over. It's over. There are little flames. Hamas has been, I think they're going to give up their weapons, which is what they promised. If they don't, it'll be, you know, they'll be harshly met, very harshly met. They don't want that. Your country's doing great. You're doing great. And just no problems. Every time I see him, nope, we're doing good. No problems. I want to thank every nation that helped us achieve this monumental breakthrough, saving countless lives. and really bringing peace and bringing the concept of peace, because nobody thought peace in the Middle East. I've always heard peace in the Middle East is impossible, and it's turned out not to be. And we do have some work to do with Iran. They can't have a nuclear weapon. It's very simple. You can't have peace in the Middle East if they have a nuclear weapon. And they can't have a nuclear weapon, and they've been told that very strongly. Great job and respected by everybody, and thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much, Mr. President. And to end that, we have today, and I'm pleased to announce that Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, UAE, Morocco, Bahrain, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Uzbekistan, and Kuwait have all contributed more than $7 billion toward the relief package. That's great. Thank you, fellas. Thank you. And many more are contributing too, so the numbers are, this just started. This is our first meeting. But every dollar spent is an investment in stability and the hope of new and harmonious. It's a region that's so important, it's so vibrant, it's so incredible. The people are so incredible, but we want to have a harmonious Middle East. The Middle East is amazing. So many friends in the Middle East, they're so smart. Sometimes they're too energetic. That's the problem. A lot of people aren't energetic. Sometimes they're a little bit too energetic. These are great people. The world is now waiting on Hamas, and that's taking place. And it's the only thing that's right now standing in the way. We have Lebanon with certain things that we're working on that are very important. We have to solve the problem of Lebanon, but it's relatively small in terms of what's been done. They're trouble. Take care of them. But this is the most prestigious board ever put together. I'm excited to announce that Norway has agreed to host an event bringing together the Board of Peace. Oh, I thought when I saw this note, I'm excited to announce that Norway, I thought they were going to say that they're giving me the Nobel Prize. Oh, this is less exciting. Oh, it says, I'm excited to announce that Norway, and I'm saying, oh, great, I'm getting the Nobel Prize, finally. Finally, they got it right. But I don't care. I don't care about Nobel Prize. I care about saving lives, just so you understand. We play and we all, do what we have to do. I only have one thing. I don't want to see people killed from parts of the world that are very far away from the United States. And if I have an ability to turn off wars, I want to use that ability because it's people. Millions of people. It's like the Prime Minister said, 25 million people maybe. And that's a small number compared to what it could have been if you really think about it, right? No, I want to save lives, and I don't care about prizes.
Kina želi da izgradi najveću mrežu satelita. Kina je početkom godine podnijela prijavu Međunarodnoj uniji za telekomunikacije kojom je zatražila novu registraciju orbitalnih pozicija i radiofrekventnog spektra za čak do 203.000 malih satelita u niskoj zemljinoj orbiti. Ovo predstavlja jedan od najvećih zahtjeva Uniji ikada. Ovakva strategija Kine pokazuje da je borba za prostor u niskoj zemljinoj orbiti postala jednako važna kao i sama tehnologija satelita. Niska orbita, posebno visine do oko 1200 km, ključna je za savremene komunikacione sisteme jer omogućava brži prenos podataka i manje kršenje podataka, odnosno manje kašnjenje podataka u odnosu na više orbite. Toliko u Pulsu planete za ovu sedmicu. Ove i ostale vijesti možete i dalje potražiti na našem sajtu newsmax.balkans.com. Mi se vidimo naredne sedmice. Ostanite uz naš kanal.